Time's up, Admiral.
Here it comes.
Chevron 1, coded.
For my ally is the Force, and the powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow.
You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Cry hammer, and let's set the dogs of war.
Chevron 2 is coded.
Conan, what is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of their women.
It's all in the reflexes.
Paul also said you're heavy into martial arts, Tai Chi and all that killer stuff.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Chevron 3 encoded.
And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. I won't. The hell I will.
Chevron 4 encoded.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Chevron 5 encoded.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Chevron 6 encoded.
Not while you can, monkey boy.
Great Scott. Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
Shall not pass!
I thought I'd die fighting side by side with Alf.
What about side by side with a friend?
A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.
Chevron 7 is locked.
Hail and howdy, everybody. Welcome back to another Saturday Night Drive-In. We are back from our break for MegaCon, and we are ready to have a good time because we're supposed to sit down and enjoy ourselves when we watch movies, not watch garbage and suffer free entertainment, even though that's what you pay us to do, essentially. I am joined, as always, by the Ginger. Hi, Jed. How you doing?
Oh, I am doing great. Like you said, this week has been one full of shit watching between Sirens of the Deep and another certain other film that
I'd already forgotten we watched that.
It's that type of week. But now we actually get to watch what I consider at least to be a fun movie. So it was quite the needed palate cleanser. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience to watch a movie I enjoyed for what felt like the first time in ages.
Yeah, we're going to have an interesting conversation tonight. Tonight we are going to be talking about the 1986 movie. I'm going to call it a movie. I'm not going to say cult classic because it's not.
It's
just
not.
Space Camp. I know. Here's the thing. All right, here's the thing. First of all, hail and howdy to the chat. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. We think that you are here. That you're the only reason to keep going. So thank you guys. Hit those like buttons. Let's get started right away. Okay, so here's my thing with Space Camp. When I was a kid and this movie came out, a thing called VHS was brand new. All right,
What's that?
VHS. If I had one, I'd throw it at you and just show you. VHS came out and video stores. And this is even before Blockbuster and other stuff. And of course, as a young lad, Space Camp came out, and I didn't know it came out because I'm a kid. All I knew about was Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Dark Crystal and cartoons in the morning. That's all I knew about back then. But then as I got older, I'm like a few years later, here come the video stores, VHS for rental. And there it was on the shelf. And all I remember is I built up in my mind that this was some sort of epic movie that I needed to see as a kid. And I know I watched it at least once, but no memory. I mean, we know I've got my partial photographic memory, and once I see something, it goes in the vault. Yeah, at that young age, it worked on its own. It wasn't completely turned on and locked in. I remember so much from those period of time watching stuff. Like right now, it's running through the memory banks. But I know I finally got my hands on it once, or maybe on television. I don't remember how or why. I know I watched it once, but I had no memory of this movie going into it this week. None. Nothing at all. So it was essentially a new watch.
Mm-hmm.
And yay, I guess it's a movie. To put it your way, sometimes it's a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad movie, but it's a movie. So why don't you walk us into this one? We'll get started.
I'm almost more glad that you had that reaction to it than that you would have loved it, because that's how I feel so many times watching like these 80s cheesy movies. Like I respect it. It's not a bad movie. It just exists. But yeah, for this film, I am incredibly biased when it comes to Space Camp. I watched a ton growing up at my grandmother's house. I don't remember why or how I watched it for the first time. Obviously, it was well after it came out, and it was on VHS. I did watch it on VHS growing up, but I'd forgotten a lot of it because I hadn't seen it in a few years. I'd forgotten Jinx was in it. I'd forgotten that there was a robot that caused...
I have a lot of problems with Jinx. But I want to make a comment, just as a serious comment. I would not be surprised if this is the movie, considering you said you watched it as a kid, that sparked your interest for practical science fiction, for practical science and science fiction.
Could have been.
Because this movie is jam-packed with it. It has got the practical, hard space travel science that you really love.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if this was the kernel of it. Before we get going, though, I want to mention one thing. If you guys are watching my chat, they pinned comment at the top of the chat. We haven't had a chance to promote it since I put it out this week. So this is the first time doing it. That's why I'm going to extend it another week, because we haven't had a chance to get you guys in the stream and on other streams going to it. The poll for the chat choice first quarter February 2025 movie. I know that's a big mouthful to get out there, but the poll is up. I know I said there'd be 5 movies, if there's only 4, because I forgot YouTube gives 4. For some reason, I thought it was 5 on the community tab, but there are 4 up there. It's currently a very close race. So you guys, if you haven't voted yet, go vote. And this time next week, I'll say this roundtable next week. End a roundtable next week. We will close the poll and announce what our drive-in movie will be for the following week. Also, because my choice for next week, I really think it's important that I choose the movie for next week for reasons that'll become apparent at the end of the show. Anyway, so go vote. Link pinned in my chat, and also if you go to my community tab, it's there. Either way, okay, now, as I was saying, so I wouldn't be surprised if your love for hard, practical science fiction space travel comes from this movie. I wouldn't be surprised.
It's entirely possible. I mean, at that age, I wouldn't have any idea to recognize that it was more practical and more realistic. This film isn't super realistic when it comes to its physics, but it's far greater than the average of films from any decade. Just it is more scientifically accurate than the majority of what we get. One piece of scientific accuracy that I really like, that it's kind of in the realm of nodding at real science, but not really going the whole mile, is, I doubt you realized it, but when the sun disappears behind the Earth at one point,
that was a little weird.
It turns red in the atmosphere, and the practicality of actually seeing that is debatable at best, but they knew enough to know that at that angle the sun would turn red because of how the atmosphere is stretching out the light, because that's why the sun looks different at sunset and sunrise, because it's got further to get to you, which changes the light spectrum. So I appreciate little things like that. There are other things that aren't all that accurate, like the Daedalus. I have problems with the Daedalus, especially when we get to the oxygen retrieval scene.
Oh, I have a big problem with that, because something doesn't quite make sense with that.
I think I know exactly what we're talking about, but we'll get there. And then Max stretches the believability for me, because even in today's world, I don't believe we have the technology to have that intelligent of a robot. I believe we can have the hardware for it, like how it moves and whatnot, remote controlled or something like that. But Jinx. I kept doing that all through the movie last night.
Max too. I have a lot of problems with Max too.
But yeah, Jinx. He's not super realistic. He's way more intelligent. He is an artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But the movie's just like, yeah, he's just a fancy wrench retriever.
Jinx is there's a big problem with Jinx and how he's treated in this movie that breaks my suspension of disbelief. I know it's a movie, I'm supposed to not worry about it, but there are certain moments in this movie that breaks my suspension of disbelief because I'm thinking, no, this isn't possible.
I do like that they use him to cause the accident instead of it just being a pure accident, because like you said, that's a 1 in 4 million chance the accident that happens, and so it makes it a lot.
Problem. Yeah, that's
right.
My problem is his existence in a certain fashion, but we'll get to that when we talk about it.
We need to spend a lot of time on Jinx because Rachel watched it for the very first time with me, and she loved Jinx. Like she straight up cried when Jinx was saying his save Max, and that is girl bait. Jinx is girl bait, and I think that might help the film.
Here's the thing: this is 1986. We are 3 years removed from Return of the Jedi,
and you can tell.
You can tell. And listen, that's one of my problems with the movie.
Really?
The Star Wars references were super fucking cringe. I was going like this. Oh.
You didn't like use the Force, Luke. Reach out with your feelings.
Because here's the thing. As a kid who literally grew up, I am essentially Max's age during that period of time. Yes, I'm old. Live with it, all of you. We didn't behave like that. I mean, we played Star Wars in the park and stuff like that, or at school in the playground. But when we weren't on the playground playing Star Wars, we didn't talk like that.
You could turn it
Star
off.
Wars. Yes, we didn't take Star Wars into everyday conversation. I didn't walk around my house going, "I'm here to save the princess." I wasn't going, "The Force is with me." Yes, did I sometimes be sitting in a chair and try to force yoink something into my hand? Of course, every kid did, but that's a silent playing moment. You're not walking around going like this.
Or the automatic doors at grocery stores. That was a big one when I was growing up.
Well, yeah. I mean, you knew it. You knew what it was, but you would pretend that you were over
exactly.
That's different. You're interacting, go through. But I didn't talk like Star Wars all the time. I didn't call people the princess. I didn't call people the Empire. I didn't do that kind of shit. I know it's 1980 cinema hyperbolizing how much kids loved Star Wars, and that we loved it. We loved it. We lived it. We breathed it. This is 86. And the toys were still massive sellers at that point. We're 3 years removed, and my collection only grew at that point, 3 years later. I mean, there was a thing called Toys R Us with aisles of wonderful, magical boxes and action figure stuff. See, when you went to Toys R Us back in the day, there were the aisles, these long, long aisles with toys. I know people don't know what that looks like these days because they have this Walmart and there's shitty little crap in the aisle. But Toys R Us had massive aisles, and you had all the Star Wars stuff there. Star Wars had literally a 20-yard aisle wall, all Star Wars. Maybe not 20 yards. Maybe my little kid memories increased size, but it was large. And then also G.I. Joe and Transformers also had full walls and everything else mixed in on the other side. But that was what it was like. It was 86, 3 years later, still massive, still bringing out new toys. I mean, I didn't get my Emperor Palpatine until 1985 because that's when they released it with the first special order. But we're getting off topic here. Point is, Star Wars was prevalent in everything, but normal kids didn't behave like Max.
I don't think Max is a normal kid.
I don't know what Max is.
Well, do you know who plays him? I had to look it up to know.
Yeah, that's I know who it is. I just lost the name. I know exactly what
it is. Young Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes, I was saying.
Who was going by the name Leaf at the time. He's credited as Leaf Phoenix.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, Leaf Phoenix. But that looks like Joaquin Phoenix. No, yeah. So very young, future Joker, Joaquin Phoenix.
Before his his training as an actor. And he's not such a great child actor.
No. Here's the thing. I guess let's dive more into the movie now. Let's get into the movie, and I'll let you take it after I say support. This movie it's pure 1980s. It is pure mid 80s, and it has a rather interesting showcase of young actors and actresses who would go on to have long-lasting careers somewhat between television and movies, or you're Kate Capshaw and you just marry Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
And that's what you get for the rest of your life, and that's how you get movie roles occasionally going forward. But
whoever cast this film could definitely see underlying talent in a lot of these actors who would go on to do great things.
Yeah, because Kelly Preston would go on to have movie and TV roles. Leah Thompson, movie TV roles. Of course, Kate Capshaw.
Her most important movie being Howard the Duck.
Sure.
Probably Back to the Future, but
well, that's the movie that kicked it off for her. Back to the Future was 85, so that's why she got cast in this movie, because she was so successful in Back to the Future. But
the big surprise, the big surprise is the other guy.
Yeah. And the dude who played what's his name? The male teenage leader. What was his character's name?
Tadeo Takamine.
Yeah. Don't get me started on that. Okay, we'll get to that scene in a moment. He would go on to have TV career. You know, he's a TV guy, somewhat side actor, and then of course somewhere in all this, you had Tom Skerritt in there somewhere.
Well, so he was also Hercules in Disney's Hercules movie.
Really? Oh, he did the voice.
Yeah, the blonde guy.
I didn't know that. I didn't know they did the voice of that. We know how much I love that movie. But
I just pulled up the cast, so I can refer to it. So, Kevin Donaldson.
Yeah. So it is a solid cast who go on to have legitimate careers, and I think in the end the most successful is probably Joaquin Phoenix out of all of them.
Oh, absolutely. He's actually Oscar winning.
Yeah, he has had the most notable successful career, and Joaquin's a unique dude. He's a unique talent in the end. He does have Joaquin Phoenix, if anything, does have range. He can transform himself for movies.
Now he can.
Yeah, now he can. But back then, Max was annoying. All right, why don't you get us started with this? Get us in here.
So Space Camp follows a class of teenagers, because they're clearly not 12-year-olds like the average Space Camp people, who, have this opportunity to go. You see a bit of Space Camp in the beginning of the film, the first act, and then they have a chance to visit a rocket that's on the shuttle pad right before a test, before it eventually goes up into space, and something goes wrong, and they're launched into space, and them, along with their teacher, have to survive in space and find a way to come back on and land on Earth with the limited knowledge they were able to learn in Space Camp. It's the overall plot.
Suffering repeated cliched trials while in space. Shit just keeps happening.
It's an incredibly simple movie. I will not be one to sit here and say this is a deep movie, it's well written or anything like that. I have a ton of fun with it, a lot of nostalgia with this film, so I'm absolutely biased when it comes to this film. And those challenges, like you're talking about, that they experience in space, they're not all that clever.
But it was all set up and payoff.
There was definitely
set up and payoffs. Every single thing that happened out there was set up during the training parts during the first and second act. So it was all not unexpected.
Yeah, I don't think there's many things that I would call flaws in the film, though. It's simple. But there are a few flaws, like around Jinx and around the Daedalus, which we'll get to. But overall, it's a solidly written film in its most basic points, getting basic things right, which we can't always expect these days. But the main thing that I love about this film that just feels so anachronistic for modern times is how enthusiastic the average child was, how enthusiastic people were about space travel in the 80s. Like, it's a cliche at this point to say, every little boy grew up wanting to be an astronaut. That's not a thing anymore. My generation, I'm weird when it comes to people my age, when it comes to, I've always dreamed about space. It's very unusual, but back then, after the moon landing and everything else of those decades, it was a new frontier at that point. It was still new and exciting, and people saw value in space travel. And that's something that I absolutely feel and try to encourage in others, is the optimism that space travel can have. That's one reason I love Star Trek, at least classic Star Trek. It was so optimistic about the future. And I feel like we've lost that. So there's an emotional connection I have with the feeling of the film that I think overrides a lot of my plot issues with it. And I wish we had movies like this today. We could not have a movie like Space Camp come out today. Not because of wokeness or anything like that, but the idea of anyone caring, and like
I
Gravity
see
is
what you're
probably
saying.
the closest type of film that we've had in recent days, because she wasn't really an astronaut. Sandra Bullock's character, I mean, that was well over a decade ago, but that one was way more on the psychological side, and it didn't focus on positivity about being excited in space.
I would say another close one was Jodie Foster's Contact. That's
I
another
haven't seen
one.
that one.
Oh, it's a very meta movie.
Mm.
It's definitely not hard science. It's very science fiction-y
Mhm.
with what goes on in it. But it's to say that's a movie that does fall into your hope category of aspiring to reach beyond the planet and explore and find out what's out there. You know, and
There's so few movies that can make kids want to be scientists. Like, there were a bunch of movies back in the day that inspired kids to their careers in later life. Like, how many people wanted to be archaeologists after seeing Indiana Jones? There were so many great movies back in the day.
And the fact that we don't fight Nazis.
No.
And go and booby trap stuff. No, you sit there and you dig in the ground, you brush shit. That's what you do.
But they were so well made movies about these different career paths that inspired kids. Because this Star Trek and stuff like that, it made a generation of scientists. Like, if you meet any millennial or Gen Z scientists, a lot of them can say, "Hey, I was inspired to be a scientist because of this sci-fi property." It made a difference in these people's lives and inspired them. And it wasn't about preaching. Like, these were films with messages and hopes and themes that resonated with people. We don't get that anymore on any sort of level, political or otherwise. And this film, in its simplicity, I think accomplished what the greatest of sci-fi can do, is make people, excited about science. And I could totally see someone saying, "Hey, I grew up watching Space Camp. It made me want to be an astronaut."
To your point, what I said earlier, this movie, there was something about it that made me want to watch it as a kid. It's like Space Camp, space is that, because of course I'm a Star Wars kid, because I experienced Star Wars before Star Trek, so that was my first science fiction influence. And I can attest to the fact that when Space Camp was out there, I was drawn to it as a kid. But and it's not as though anybody kept me from watching it. It just, when you're 6, you don't really get the choice to pick the movie. You get the movie given to you. And usually it was either a cartoon or a Disney movie. So, or as I get older, my parents would pick the movie for family night, and I would be allowed to watch more adult movies, which is why I was watching R-rated movies when I was 8 years old. Because hey, I saw a lot of stuff, and there was the deal. The deal was made. I was going to hear explicit language. I was going to see nudity, which I already knew I liked. And at that point, I was told, you can watch this stuff, but if we hear that you have said the word, the F word, shit, all that shit, if we hear you said that out in the wild, it's over. You're not gonna see another R movie till you're of age. And boy, did I keep my mouth shut. Except once. I think I've told the story. Watching Weird Science by myself, I heard the word bitch for the first time. And all I knew was that was an insult to a girl. I didn't know what it meant. And I was on the school bus, and a girl was being annoying, and I said, "Shut up, bitch!" And I got in trouble. And nobody knew where I heard it. And then one day, a short time later, we're sitting in the den, and my mom is there, and my grandma's there, and we're watching Weird Science. And the scene is coming up where he says, "Shut up, bitch." And I knew it was coming, and I just started going like this. And he says, "Shut up, bitch." And my mom looks at me and says, "That's where you heard it." And I was like, now it wasn't fucker shit, so I didn't have my privilege taken away from me, but that was when I learned, keep your mouth shut. You want to keep watching all the movies you watch. Anyway, another tangent. Go back to the movie again. But this is the experience, though. We're talking about experiences. To Jed's point, he's right when he says kids were attracted to this movie. I wanted to see it as a little kid. I just don't remember watching it. That's my point in the end of that one. All right. So in the movie, Kate Capshaw's Andy. It starts with her watching the Challenger mission go up, but she's just sitting out in a field in the middle, I guess is Kansas. I don't know. It's a field somewhere in the Midwest, because she's got her child version has a heavy accent.
Was it Challenger? I thought it was the moon landing.
No, I don't think it was the moon landing. I don't.
Well, that's why she was staring up at the moon, and she would be the right age, 69 to 86.
I guess, sure. I don't know. Whatever. But she's into it. I want to go to the stars. I want to get there. I'm going to go up there, and with her very heavy accent, and then Kate Capshaw tries it for 2 seconds at the start of the movie, and then abandons it for the rest of the movie. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, Carrie Fisher abandoned her accent 5 minutes into Star Wars: A New Hope, and then didn't have it the rest of the movie. Point is, though, she tried, and then she just left it behind.
You got to cast a different child actor then.
I know.
But when it comes to that girl, a lot of people have criticized that scene because her lines are very cheesy. And usually I'm one against cheesy lines, obviously. I talk about cheesiness mainly in a negative context, which not everyone agrees with. But I myself said near identical shit to that nonsense she was saying out in the field at the beginning of the mill. I resonate with that, remembering like, oh yeah, I was cringe. I once went up to my parents and I was just like, you know, the one thing I want from life? And they're like, what are you talking about? It's like, I want to go on an adventure. So yeah, in its cheesiness, it was accurate for the type of child that they're reflecting, one who will grow up to be interested in science and whatnot. I think it's accurate, even though it comes across as incredibly cringe.
But it is accurate. So she grows up to be an Air Force pilot, and I was thinking, okay, because like I said, I don't remember this movie anything, so I'm thinking, okay, she's going to have to be some sort of military if she's going to be in the shuttle program in the 80s. And there it is right away. The movie gets it right. She's an Air Force pilot, which puts her in candidacy for getting into NASA and stuff like that. Problem is she gets passed over. Now, man, there's a bit of an age difference between her and Tom Skerritt. It's a bit of an age there. Oh, Tom Skerritt, he's like in his 50s.
Really?
I think he was in his 40s or late 40s at this point. Because Top Gun was only a year before, and he's not a young dude. And Kate Capshaw was just in Indiana Jones across from Harrison Ford, who's in his 30s at that point. So
you're right. He's 20 years older than her.
Yeah. So hey, dude. Hey, I hope I can still land that kind of shit right now. I need that. I need that kind of hope in my life. Okay, but point is, then Tom Skerritt comes out of nowhere, and they do quick information dumps here that he's been an astronaut, he's gone up, and he's a good husband. He's supporting her, but because she's been passed over again, he guilts her into coming help run space camp. She don't want to do it. And then
she's definitely done it before because she knows who Max is.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
she knows why she hates it.
Yeah, because Max. Listen, I would hate it too because of Max. I would too. That kid is an obnoxious little Twinkie. All right.
Do you have a kid that you liked as a character?
I guess I like Kelly Preston's character the best because she's like the
Tish.
Tish, because she's the realest one there.
Oh yeah.
She may sound like a bimbo, but she's actually intelligent, and she doesn't behave like an idiot ever.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one, even though she freaks out a couple times. We're dead.
Which is kind of fair.
Which is
in
normal.
The context.
That is a realistic response to that thing. We're all gonna die. Oh, are we dead? She is kind of a stabilizing influence because of her eidetic memory and her ability to talk straight is the best way to put it. She could talk straight to you, and you don't hate her for it because she's not being mean. She's just talking at you.
Mm-hmm.
So I like Kelly Preston's Tish.
She's my favorite character. While growing up, I had a massive crush on her.
Kelly Preston was hot, dude.
Oh yeah,
Mrs. John Travolta. That's who she.
Oh, is that where? Okay, I didn't know what else
Mrs.
she was
John
connected
Travolta.
to.
She's Mrs. John Travolta. She's his beard.
But yeah, with her character, I wish the movie had done a lot more with her. I think she's the most underutilized in the film, but she has the most complexity. That's one thing I really like about her, is that dichotomy between bimbo and intelligent person. And to a certain extent, I think she's a little bit ashamed about how smart she is, and that's why she puts on the air of being as normal of a girl as possible. And there's some narrative meat there that we occasionally see, like she's often talked down to. She's often, no one expects anything good from her, but she's always there and she's always ready when they want help. And so, yeah, I think she's the most interesting character, but the most underutilized as well. Because Rudy's comic relief. I don't think there's anything more to him than surface level.
I see as Rudy. He also was in Revenge of the Nerds as Lamar, the gay guy from Revenge of the Nerds. That's all I ever see him as, Lamar, the gay guy from Revenge of the Nerds. That's all I ever said. That is how I remember him in life. So, but here's the thing also. Now, back in the day, there was no Mary Sueism going on. Today, they could turn Tish easily into Mary Sue because of her eidetic memory. And there's a moment that jumped out at me. And I thought, if this was today, they would have done this, but they did in this movie when they're saying, we need to pilot the ship. And they say, Tish, how do we do this? She goes, I don't know. I never read that book. That it makes her, if she had read it, she could help. But it's not a superpower that you can just activate. If she doesn't have the knowledge, she can't use her memory. And that's why it's a good thing that the way they treat her in this. They don't turn her into the save all Mary Sue. It's like, oh, let's use Tish's ultimate memory to get out of this. No, she only knows what she read. So it's an intelligent use of a character's special quality, but not overused to break the movie, which forces Leah Thompson's character to then pilot the ship or go with her own personal struggles that she goes through in this movie about being, I believe it's one thing to be bossy, but it's another one to be the boss. I'm paraphrasing, but you know what?
But you're 100% correct that a modern film would capitalize on the feminism of not just Tris, but I think Tish, but also Andy and Catherine, because they're both well accomplished and very intelligent women, but they're absolutely not Mary Sue's. Like Catherine, she would be the perfect captain in a modern day adaptation. She would need the man for nothing. She would need Kevin at no stage. But yeah, she's intelligent. She's worked very hard for this. She's a good pilot of real aircraft, but she doesn't know how to act under high tense situations. There are times where she can't make command decisions. And that's when Kevin shines through, because as much as he says he doesn't care, it gives him a quality to think about something rationally when it comes down to it. So I think the character work is actually incredibly solid for the length of this film and how many characters it's balancing. A lot of them are incredibly consistently written, and there's subtlety to it. And I'm so glad that this didn't come out today, because the feminism angle would have ruined it. Catherine could very easily be a bitch. Andy could be insufferable. And I like, Catherine's shortcomings. I like Andy seeing Catherine and being like, all right, you're like me. I might not have the chance to achieve my dreams, but I can push you as hard as I can to make you fulfill our dreams. Like, I like that character work, and it's very Ender's Game-like to me. If you haven't read the book. So something similar happens where you torture the kid who has the most potential to drive that potential out of them. And so, I think the character works surprisingly strong, with the exception of Max.
Yeah, I mean, so we get everybody introduced to the Rebel Space Camp, and you basically, in classic 80s fashion, it's what you see is mostly what you get, with decent, as you say, character development throughout of it. Here's my problem, though. Here's where I start having problems with the movie's rules of engagement. Let's just say of Space Camp. We know Kevin is supposed to be there. He was signed up. He's supposed to be a part of it. During signing, because he gets a hard-on for Leah Thompson, he steals another dude's badge. He was not supposed to be a part of the shuttle team. He's supposed to be something else, whatever the other teams were, because every color group was a specific team. It's not like you're rotating to get a chance to try everything. No, you're there to learn that thing at Space Camp. And the moment he's at a roll call for shuttle team and he's not on the list, and he shouldn't. Why is he still there? I have a very large problem with the story. Why is Kevin allowed to stay on that when he is clearly supposed to be someplace else, and that other poor son of a bitch gets relegated to where Kevin was supposed to be?
Well, and he confesses right off the bat. Like, he doesn't try to hide it. He's just like, that's actually pronounced Kevin Donaldson.
Yeah. the movie, the whole concept of that, it loses a little legitimacy for me right there, just a little bit, because like he shouldn't be here. He should have been like, okay, if this was a real life situation, okay, kid, haha, go to where you're supposed to be. Let's bring in the kid who is supposed to be here. That's how it would happen in a real camp situation. You don't get to decide. Oh, I want to do this one because I want to F Leah Thompson. You know that you don't get to do that, but he did. Because it's a movie, and that's and they're the romantic interest of the movie, those two. So I don't like that. And then Max talking his way into it. I've been here for 2 years already. Why can't I go on the big kid ride, Mom? I don't know. It's just I don't understand. And why is he allowed to be there? Because he has 180 IQ. Granted, that's a bigger IQ than I have.
That's pretty high.
Yeah, that is genius level IQ, and we see that when he puts Jinx back together later, he does obviously have an understanding of robotics, but he's still he may be a genius, but he's a child, and he's not like one of those awkward genius childs. Because the thing about genius is when your IQ gets that high, you have terrible social skills. Because your brain is overridden by your intellect and you don't know how to read the room properly. And maybe one could say Adam, his Star Wars obsession is his awkwardness. No, they didn't understand that much about that kind of shit yet. They were simply making him a Star Wars nerd, how they thought a Star Wars nerd behaved as a kid. So that's what they did. But the whole thing is this then. So they put this team together, which should not be together. And let me ask you this. How do you feel about the team relationships, how they build in this period of time? Because we're going to get a classic 80s montage in this.
Yeah.
Classic.
It's incredibly underdeveloped. And obviously, like you're saying, there's the montage and then there's the coming together and the moment of crisis later. I don't think it's developed super well. This movie needed to be probably a mini series. Like you need more time to develop a lot of this, to develop Tish, because Catherine and Tish only really have one conversation on the bunk bed, and then they fight the rest of the time. Whereas that's not set up properly. Like there's no antagonism between them in their private scenes, but in the group scenes there always is. And I don't think it's initially done well. I think it's resolved decently in actual space, but the space camp portion is just
training montage.
The training montage is
it's all the setups. Like here's Catherine struggling to pilot the ship properly because she's gonna have to do that at the end. Here's Rudy not screwing up with his duty so he can be confident that why would you build 2 blue valves? That design makes no sense. Why are they both blue? Why isn't it another? Why couldn't it be black?
There's a lot of that type of stuff that doesn't make any sense. Why would the air canisters be accessible from that part in the bay? A lot of that doesn't make sense.
How does she screw up with the hose and get fired? She did it right a second ago.
That's what I'm saying. The Daedalus sequence is nonsense, especially about one aspect, which I'm almost certain you caught on.
So, all right, there's two. All right, so let's get through Space Camp, and then we'll jump to the meat of the movie, which is the accident and what. So, but we can't to get there. We have to talk about Jinx, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they get introduced to Jinx, who appears as comic relief right away to bop Kevin on the head, and they mention Jinx is a $27 million project that has zero oversight. And they let a little kid mess with it all the time. I don't care if he's a genius, he's still a kid. And they let him keep it they already busted him in the closet with it. They let him keep it there. They are more angry that Kevin and Catherine went to make out on the beach while watching the shuttle than that that Max has a $27 million robot in the closet. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. I don't get it. And Ariel, we know we don't generally do questions in this unless it's a serious one. I will answer this though. V was a miniseries in the middle of the 80s, so I guess around the same. V was the 70s, wasn't it? Was it the 70s or 80s?
I don't know what V is.
It was 80s. it's an invasion, alien invasion thing where they lizard people masking as normals. It was a big thing.
Yeah.
I think it was mid 80s. I think it was mid 80s.
But you're 100% in saying that Jinx causes a lot of plot issues. I get the girl bait. I understand why the cuteness factor helps a film like this. And I mean, it helped Mandalorian a lot with the cute factor, but it causes plot issues. Jinx is too intelligent for the era. He's too intelligent for the now modern era as well. But then, yeah, how people react to him. Oh, it's a $27 million project, but his chips get a little wonky after a few hours in space, so he was entirely abandoned.
It's still a $27 million robotics project that is essentially, like you said, artificial intelligence. It can interact, it can think for itself. It apparently has Wi-Fi in 1986.
That was a bizarre scene when it interfaced with all the computers by lighting up.
I mean, let's be honest. Yeah, it literally has Wi-Fi. It literally has Wi-Fi, and let's be honest. It's an R2D2 situation in the mid-80s.
It is a cute robot.
It's all right. Jinx, love Max.
I like the voice.
Best friends forever.
But I think the movie would have made a lot more sense and plot-wise without him. I think the movie is more enjoyable with him. Like, it's cheesier, and I think it works for the film. I like the film with him in it, but I think you definitely need a rewrite to justify his existence, because he serves an essential plot function later on, but you need to do more work, just like you're saying, to justify him being that intelligent, being in a position to be kidnapped by Max, basically stolen by Max, and why no one cares about him. Because when we see him at the beginning of the film, he's literally just grabbing wrenches for mechanics, but he's intelligent enough to recognize wrenches. That's visual intelligence. Like, his eyes work enough that he can establish what he's looking at and respond to it.
He clearly has. I mean, listen, this is 1986. I don't know what security was like anywhere, but he could just like roll into a computer lab and nobody's there. There's no security, and has a direct link to NASA's hard drives and computer. I mean, it's just, and he can plug in with the pin code, the pin extension, and just like hack it. What's going on here?
It's bizarre. It is absolutely bizarre.
Jinx is literally a plot device. He's there to cause the problem with the Deados, because then Max makes this whole thing. I wish I could go to space. I want to go up there.
Well, you got to frame this a little bit more for why that happened. So it's
all right. Well, that's my other problem. All right. So after this happens, because Max and Jinx helped Kevin sneak out so that he could mac on Leah Thompson, Catherine, and they get busted. Now, I find it interesting how quickly they got busted. There was like no.
Yeah, well, how did they find out? How did Andy and Zach
check.
find out?
It'd be one thing if like, okay, room check, curfew check, bunk empty. Okay, what's going on? No, they just walk in and know they're gone. Little plot hole there. And then Max isn't going to give it up, but Jinx gives it up. And then when Kevin comes back in here, this is a weird moment. Kevin's angry reaction to Max seems really disproportionate.
Well, I mean, that's how you would react to him, it sounds like.
Well, no. I mean,
you're not in Star Wars. You're not Luke Skywalker. There is no Empire.
You know what I mean? He's more angry because Max didn't give him up.
No, he doesn't know that.
I know that, but it's also, he is a kid and he's yelling.
It is projection. It is irrational, but I can see him making behaving that way, because when you especially, I can understand this. And when you're in a subordinate position like that, you can't yell at your superior, so you find the person who you feel like you do have authority over, you do have power over, and you take out your frustrations on them. He does take it too far, and focusing on the Star Wars stuff is weird, but I can see him making the decision to go a little hard. They take it too far, but Max being the direction that his frustration ends up going, I can see, though.
But every other extra in that room could have said, yeah, Jinx did it. They were all there. They were all there. And
I don't think Kevin would have cared in that moment. Like, it wasn't about being told on.
Something's just off with me in that moment. I feel like it's a little too far with how he acts. It's like, never talk to me again. It's just like, dude, he's what, 10? He's like, what, 10, 11 years old? Come on. I mean, he's a kid. So then explain what happens with Max and Jinx then, which sets us up for the actual event that gets the movie. Go ahead, do it. You do it. Jinx and Max. Yeah, you do it. I don't want to do it.
So yeah, Max runs away from Kevin, all upset about that, and he just like whispers to himself on his own, "I wish I was in space." And Jinx takes it like, "He's my friend. I'm gonna do that." So he runs to Max's mainframe, connects to it remotely by lifting up his shoulders and doing a spinny light display. And then NASA's like, "What can NASA do for you, Jinx?" And Jinx figures out with the help of the NASA mainframe that if there's this certain type of accident which has a 1 in 4 million year chance of happening, like it's not just a 1 in 4 million chance of happening. It's it's complete impossibility. But if one of the boosters accidentally lights, they can't stop it. So the only way to prevent the rocket from, coming up and then falling over and crashing and killing everyone, they have to light the second one and get them into space. Otherwise, the people on board will die. I wish that there was a little bit more in the space camp element. The idea that I've always thought is that there was some competition at space camp to say, hey, you win this thing, and the prize is you get to sit in the shuttle for this fire test.
They seem to get it because they're the shuttle crew. That's why that's the explanation that seems clearest to me. You're the kids who are playing show, because every other kid team had their place at what is essentially what do they call control? We'll just call control. Control. What they were going to do there. So
it just seems so unfair that that is way cooler than anything else you could do. And I think making a prize would work better and tie in a lot more momentum into the space camp portion if you're trying to win this competition or whatnot.
It would have. You could have had antagonistic teams, like, oh, here's the bully team, here's that. We're doing this point, but no, it's just, okay, you're going to get to sit in the shuttle, they're going to do a test burn, and you're going to feel it, and then you're not going to go anywhere. But
it's underdeveloped.
Yeah, but because they make it a point, because Jinx takes everything literally, he triggers it, and they're forced to launch them into space. And it's a very strange sequence where once Andy realizes what's happening, she makes Catherine get out of it, and they can't get Catherine in the chair, which I found a little strange. It shouldn't be that hard to scramble into the chair. I don't know.
Well, they were already launching. The thing was shaking. There was already, and she's freaking out. I can see that as being believable with the orientation, everything that's going on. One thing I want to mention before they go into space is no one else watching this will notice this. This is just me being a sci-fi or a science nerd. The credits actually get it right. Space Camp is not in Florida. It is not within driving distance of Kennedy. It's in Huntsville, Alabama. And the credits say filmed on location in Huntsville, Alabama. So they moved Space Camp to Florida just so that they could do that. And that feels contrived. And they shipped. They have all the other kids there. That's another reason why I think the competition could work better. It's like, hey, if you win this competition, we'll take you from Alabama to Kennedy to be a part of this, and then actually see the
feels
launch.
Like a good story fix that you put in there. Yeah, that would make it a lot more compelling. Because here's the thing about this movie, I wasn't compelled at all. I'm just sitting waiting for things to happen that I know that once I see the things being put into place, like, oh, I know that this is going to happen, X is going to happen, Y is going to happen. We're just getting there. These are the events that are going to move it into that situation. And we get there. Jinx's little thing works. They're forced to fire them into space. And I don't want to go through every little thing up there. Let's just say two things. Let's talk about how the Daedalus in space, not Daedalus, sorry, the Atlantis in space is the Atlantis shuttle. They do good work of all these kids fighting through their issues. Like Catherine learning about herself, Kevin learning about himself, Lamar finding confidence, Tish. Well, we already talked about Tish, and Max is an idiot.
And he kind of goes through the whole thing being an idiot.
Yeah, Max does. Max is another plot device, essentially. At this point, he's a plot device, and it's all about now. We would spend far longer than we really can going over all of the individual things. I would just say that those aspects of the movie are very good. It's done well. Catherine's realizations about herself, Andy's ability to connect with the kids, and all that kind of stuff, and I want to talk about now a couple of the events. Now, I felt most of the things that they have to do, because they're going to run out of oxygen now. They don't have enough oxygen to get back to the window where Control can automatic pilot them back down to Earth, because they're like short 2 or 3 hours of oxygen. So they're short. They also don't have communications because it wasn't rigged for space travel. It was only still in the process of being fitted. So they only had short range. And once they break through the atmosphere, they cannot reach Control. Now, during this point, Tish figures out they can use Morse code through one of the Control dashboards to communicate, but it takes them the whole goddamn movie down to Control to realize there's a blinking light. What the blinking light?
That's actually a failing on Tish's part, because she intentionally chose a piece of equipment that they're not using very much, so it won't bother them. But at the same time, NASA's not going to be looking at it because it's unimportant. So if she had chose like piloting software or something like that, something that's, it might be in the way that she's doing it, but it's still more likely to be seen. Like, it was a hard balance act that she went through that they didn't even talk about her making that decision. The importance of the item versus how in the way it was. I think it would have worked a lot better if she done a different piece. Because like you saw, no one was sitting at that station. That wasn't considered an important
But they were
station.
standing close to it so many times that I couldn't help but feel like they were purposefully not looking at it so they wouldn't see it, because Tom Skerritt was like right there multiple times. And
they should all know Morse code at this time.
And so was the dude from Lost. So they were right there looking at it the whole time. But so what happens though is everybody does what they're supposed to do. They realize that the ground control realizes that they go to Daedalus, this fake space station that was being built at the time. I don't think that was a real space station.
No, yeah, it's a fictional one.
Yeah. And there's oxygen tanks there. So Andy realizes it too, and they're going to go there and get it. And here's a major problem I have, and I want to see if this is what you think I noticed. So,
but before we move to that, this is actually my favorite part of scientific accuracy in the film. So they talk about needing 12 hours from their current orbit before the launch window opens to land at Edwards Air Force Base in California. And then when they raise their orbit, they don't talk about it, but the launch window is actually moved ahead, because the higher your orbit, the longer it takes. So by moving up to Daedalus, they slow down the time until they reach the launch window. They don't talk about that, but that is real world orbital mechanics. They went closer to a geostationary orbit. They're not quite there, I don't believe. But yeah, just that simple thing. They didn't need to talk about it, but the launch window was extended because the oxygen ran out well before the launch window, when originally that's when it was supposed to run out. And so I really appreciate that. I would have liked maybe them to have mentioned it, but the fact that they thought about it enough to get it accurate, they knew to move the launch window when they raised their orbit.
So here now begins the situations of setting up challenges for our team. And up to a point, I'm okay with them. But then things just seem to, for me, happen for plot purposes to make the tension rise for other than just to make tension rise. Now, of course, here's my next problem, my real problem with this. When Andy gets all geared up to go fly over with the space jet pack to Daedalus to get the oxygen tank, she can't reach it. And it's like, I'm too big, and then Max says, I'm small enough. Okay.
They clearly show that she's too big in her helmet. Her helmet can't fit through.
Yes. And they send Max. Max says, "I'm small enough," and then we have a silly sequence about Max wants to go out, but then doesn't want to do it when he looks at the vastness of space beyond the planet.
I really like that too because people
that-
do go mad going outside a spacecraft for the first time.
You look off into the big black, and what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
This ain't Star Trek. That really is all you can see, and we don't know what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I don't like how he's like, use the Force, Luke. And he's like, it's fine now.
Again, that's the cringe. The cringe, it's losing points when it does that. Now, then they send Max over and they tighten the suit. Base suit doesn't fit him. The suit itself doesn't fit him, so they use straps to tighten it. But the helmet is still the same size as Andy's. So how does he get to the oxygen tank? It doesn't it's still the same problem. Now, it's one thing if she took his body and used his feet to like hook it and pull it out, some shit like that.
That would have been funny.
But,
or if they'd shown her helmet getting through and her shoulders catching.
Yeah, but it was the helmet, bunk.
You're 100% correct. That doesn't make sense. Max is not smaller in the helmet because the helmet's the same helmet.
Yes. But they're gonna get the oxygen tanks.
Well, he comes from a different direction too.
I know. So, and now she gets one, and then while she's delivering the first one, Max. And here's where I feel is unnecessary tension. We didn't need Max floating off into space.
Especially because it's not that scary because she has the pack, like we all knew.
Yeah, and
yes, it'll be fine.
But it's not a fantasy show. It's not a fantasy show. Point is this. We didn't need Max floating off because it'd be one thing if we said, "Oh, she has only so much propulsion left in her jetpack." They didn't set that kind of thing up at all. We know she's going to get him, bring him back. That's just, all they want to do is to waste time that they're running out of air to make it. Yeah. Oh, the clock's running
more
down.
Tense.
Unnecessary. And then
there are ways to make it work more because basically the same thing happens with Andy in just a moment. Like you can't have both of those right next to each other. And if I were writing it, I would appreciate it a little bit more scientific accuracy as well. Because if I were in Max's situation, floating out while holding onto a canister, if he pulled that canister towards him and then kicked off of it and let go, that would slow him down a lot to help Andy get there. And then adding in the tension of maybe.
But he's a little kid. He's not going to think. I don't care if it's genius or not. He's not.
That's true, but I'm
gonna die.
I would have appreciated just more going on because it's boring just to see him float and her float slightly faster towards him. Just adding in a little more dynamicism to the sequence would have helped a lot.
It's still unnecessary tension, and then there, as I mentioned earlier, the retardation of the whole valve situation. There's two blues, but one's next to green, one next to red or yellow, red, whatever.
Well, it doesn't make sense.
Dumb design. Nobody would have a same colored valve where somebody could make that mistake and possibly blow up the shuttle with pure liquid oxygen. Makes no sense.
I do like Catherine isn't right about everything.
Well, that's what I mentioned about good character development. That's about her character development, but it's still an unnecessary thing that doesn't make logical sense that the engineers wouldn't do that. The engineers wouldn't do that. They're not that dumb. They're freaking space engineers at the time. And
what makes even less sense is color is harder to see in space. It's actually a thing. So you wouldn't want to color code it to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to mention that earlier. Thank you. I forgot that. And then they have to manufacture Andy being a retard and missing the nozzle and being knocked out. And then that
we never find out what her injury is. She's just kind of and then she's fine.
Arm. Well, yeah, I mean, we don't know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is they don't clarify it.
But none of them are doctors on this, so it's not like they could clarify it because we never get.
Well, they could at least find where the injury is. It's like, oh, she's bleeding here, or oh, there's.
Well, either way, it's another contrived thing because now we have to set up the finale, the climax, where they're going to miss the automatic window because they have to go to the override to save her because nobody left behind.
I do like that, like making that decision. The character work, like you said. I don't like NASA just taking over in that moment. Like, wait till they close the doors.
The circumstances are retarded, but the character work is good, is what I'm
100%.
saying. Situations 100%. I have a problem with situations, but the the work the movie is doing is good. They are mutually exclusive to me. So, and then now here's all the setup and payoff. Now the kids, because Andy's injured, the expert pilot is injured. The woman who could pilot it fine, she's injured. Now Catherine has to be the pilot. Kevin has to be the commander. They all have to work together. They all have to do their thing. You will survive if you work as a team. The whole setup for that shit. And and Andy wakes up during it to give pep talks, this and that. Don't worry, use the Force, Luke, kind of bullshit. And they get through it. And that's it. They find out they get a secondary window because they use the Morse code because Jinx barges in there, and they have to fight to get the tiny little robot out. And they notice the Morse code, and they're communicating, and they say go to White Sands, Arizona. Was it Arizona or Nevada?
New Mexico.
New Mexico. Thank you. I was close. Right area.
Which makes sense why those launch windows would be so close together. It was like a 20-minute difference.
Yeah, so they managed to do it, and then it's they overcome everything. They work as a team, and then we just see the shuttle land, and the movie's over.
I would have liked a lot more with that sequence too, because I think that's the biggest problem with the film is not enough time to actually do anything with what they're thinking. Because this is the Cold War movie, and a lot of the great Cold War movies that we remember have the Russians being involved in one way or another. So them realizing they missed the Edwards, and they've got enough air for a while, but not enough to come back around to Edwards, so we have to go to the Russians and ask to use their landing facilities. I think that might have been an interesting thing to add tension to it.
I mean, they do mention earlier when Kevin's being very nihilistic, we're all going to get blown up anyway. We're going to get nuked anyway. What's the big deal?
Yeah, they do hint at the Cold War, but I think having the Russians actually being interplayed into it, not in necessarily an antagonistic force, I don't want space fights or anything, but maybe hey, can we use your facilities? It's the only way we're going to save these kids, and then unity coming through it.
Well, that stuff's all developed, but then the movie just kind of ends.
Yeah.
I mean,
as soon as they land.
We needed a homecoming shot of everybody coming home, and parents hugging their kids. That even though the parents had no role in this, you just get some extras.
I feel like you would call the parents and be like, "Hey, your kids are in space."
The suddenness of the ending, even though they ends on the high note of we survived, we don't know what happened. We don't know what Andy had hurt. We don't know what happens to.
There's no consequences, good or bad. It's nice to have consequences.
I don't need a full epilogue, but I need something to really end the movie on, instead of just a shot of the shuttle landing, or at least some statement, some classic historical statement of space travel or something like that.
Oh yeah, some bullshit of Andy went on
or something, or I don't know, something.
It doesn't end well.
It just ends, and so, like you said, as we're back here, this isn't a bad movie. It's just a movie. But this is I'm going to use your own. Whenever I throw an 80s movie at you, I'm going to use your own logic against you now. It's just kind of a movie. It exists in its time. It's not anything special, and it's not a bad movie. It's not a great movie, but it's not a bad movie. It's worth an evening's entertainment. It's nothing. It's unique for the time, but not unique today. By today's standards. So it's just a movie.
Yeah, and I won't argue with that. I understand that my bias towards the film is affecting my enjoyment of it, absolutely. I would classify this film as it's in that category that we talk about sometimes. I think this movie is primed for a good remake. I don't think they should because of the people involved, but it's the type of movie that it's totally fine to remake, because I think there are some good ideas in here, some good character work, but it wasn't properly executed and wasn't received well. These types of movies are what I'm all for getting remade with a gem that wasn't polished properly.
The problem is, with today's technology, the circumstances of this happening, and then
you would have to alter the situation.
There'd be a lot of
nearly eliminate Jinx.
And guess what? There's no such thing as the space shuttle program anymore, because certain people in our government at a certain period of time murdered it in its sleep and got rid of it. But hey, honestly, it's better off in private in the private sector
these days. Absolutely. But I would make changes like that. Have it update a little bit, set it in the near future to make some of the science a little bit more believable. But it's in that category that I think you have to make a lot of changes. You would absolutely, but there
Circumstances,
is
everything. Yeah,
good content in here
there's
that
good story in there,
deserves
but-
its chance.
But as you mentioned earlier, I don't think those involved today in creating movies, I don't think they're capable of this.
Oh,
They're
100% not.
They're not
Yeah.
capable of that. Not capable. All right, it's your week. You get to score it first.
So, as I always like to say, subjectively and objectively, my scores are wildly different. If it was just about how much I enjoyed the film, this would be something crazy high, like an 8.5. I love this movie. It is so nostalgic for me. But when it comes to the objective, I realize there are plot issues. It is simple. This is a simple movie. It's cheesy. It's unbelievable at times. And yeah, the helmet thing causes problems. That's not nitpicking. I'm fully with you. Her helmet not fitting, then his fitting, even though they're the same helmet, is dumb and causes actual plot issues.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of the character work is strong. A lot of the acting's very strong. And there are absolutely things to enjoy about this film. So it does color my objective score in a way that might be surprising for me. I think this film deserves a 6 out of 10.
Okay. I'm right there with you. My subjectivity, I mentioned one time, my suspension of disbelief is broken multiple times in this. I cringe a lot at the Star Wars stuff. The little things taking points off, the believability of some things I'm having trouble with, even though it's supposed to be a movie. I'm having a hard time believing people are not monitoring a $27 million robot. I have a hard time believing that. I have a hard time believing that the helmet thing, the continual problems they suffer just to increase tension. I know it's movie tension, but it needs to be a little believable for me to stay engaged, and I kept getting disengaged from the movie. So I'm slightly higher than you, 6.5 out of 10 for me. Because in the end, it's a movie, it's okay, and little Adam would have loved it, but grown-up Adam's like, okay, fine. That's great. There we go. We got another one in the books. Now, I had originally planned for last week. I was going to keep us in the 80s. I was going to go Top Gun because I thought, you know what? I want some jingoism. I want this. But then, if you're watching this in the real time, I've reviewed a horrible movie unintentionally twice. If you're paying attention to what's going on my channel, there are 2 different reviews for my Captain Black Falcon America Brave New World. I had some copyright issues. There's 2 versions up. You can watch either one. But Jed's about to go watch it. He's going to suffer it so we can talk about it on Roundtable. But I figured, you know what? I need to wash the bad taste out of our mouths for this movie very quickly. And there's a window of opportunity to actually watch the best Captain America movie. We're doing Winter Soldier next week. A real Captain America movie. I think it fits the mood. Let's see what it really looks like. So next week we are doing Captain America, Winter Soldier, because I want to. And then the following week, you guys will vote on what movie Jed and I will watch. Let's just take a quick little peek.
I like how this poll's going. I'm excited.
I bet you know. I bet you do, because you've heard my bitching and moanings in the back world. Oh! It's changed. It's changed since last I saw it. Okay, here we go. Let me bring it up real quick here, where we can get a good look at it. The link is pinned in my chat. Legatus can share it in all the chats. Is it? Yeah, here it is. Okay. Here we go. So right now, The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, my favorite Sinbad movie. This is my favorite Sinbad movie. I love this movie. It is Ray Harryhausen at his best. I mean, it's classic Ray Harryhausen goodness right there. And it's got Tom Baker in it.
I didn't know that.
He's the villain.
Ooh.
Tom Baker's the villain. Yeah.
I'm excited. I hope that movie wins.
So we've got Excalibur, still the best adaptation of the Arthurian legend. Fight me, all of you, fight me. There's no any way about that. We've got Seven, we've got Children of Men, and we've got The Golden Voyage of Sinbad. Now remember, I did not choose these. These were chosen by a third-party individual who did not submit a vote. So we just got these and we put them up. and you guys get to vote. I'm going to give you guys until essentially 4 p.m. next Sunday, or around where roundtable will end, give or take 20, 30 minutes, depending on what we're talking about and how far we range. So no, Ariel, Sword in the Stone is not. Sword in the Stone is garbage. I hate that movie. I despise that movie. I hate it. So go vote. Try to only vote once, please. Don't do what Ariel was talking about earlier, multiple votes. Be good. Be nice. Play by the rules. And there you go. So go ahead and vote on that, guys, and we will announce it at the end of Roundtable next week. And then Jed and I now we're gonna win either way. These are all good movies in their own rights, whether I dislike one of them intensely or not. You guys will be provided with good entertainment either way. All these movies will provide excellent discussions. I can guarantee that. So even though Excalibur has been done in a version of the show, it doesn't exist anymore. So we get to redo that if it does happen. Anyway, there we go. Thank you one and all for joining us this weekend. We hope you have had a good time. If you did, we simply ask that you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave comments. Comments are good. They help with the algorithm. And we'll catch you guys next week. So until then, everybody, take it easy. Have a good night or day wherever you may be.